Hi Reddit, I'm 32F, and I used to think I had one of those rare, solid marriages you hear about in love stories. Married for 5 years to my husband Nate, 34M, together for almost a decade. We met in grad school and bonded over late nights, coffee, and shared anxiety over student debt. Life was never perfect, but it felt stable. We weren't flashy. We weren't dramatic. Just two nerdy introverts building a quiet life together in the suburbs with our dog and our little rituals. Every Sunday morning meant pancakes. Friday nights were for old movies. He always kissed my forehead before leaving for work. Always. That's why the first time something felt off, I almost gaslit myself into ignoring it. A few weeks ago, Nate's laptop started acting weird. He's in IT, and ironically, he's terrible at backing things up. He was swamped with work, so he asked me to handle a quick file transfer for him. Said he needed a few large folders moved from his desktop to his external drive while he was out running errands. I had no reason to hesitate. I'd used his laptop a dozen times before. I wasn't snooping. I was helping. But that's when I saw it. A folder on his desktop titled Wife 2.0. At first, I thought it was a joke. Nate has a dry, quirky sense of humor. Maybe it was a list of ways to improve our relationship? Or a sarcastic take on how he wished I'd stop leaving socks on the couch? But curiosity got the better of me. And when I opened it, I felt my stomach drop. So, when I clicked on the Wife 2.0 folder, I expected something dumb, maybe a meme dump or some project name he was working on. What I didn't expect was for it to open into 8 separate subfolders. Each one labeled with different months, starting nearly a year ago. Inside those folders? Documents, notes, screenshots, voice memos, even spreadsheets. And every single one of them was about me. Not us, not our life together, me, dissected like some kind of project. There were labeled PDFs titled things like *Emotional Triggers, March. *Behavioral Patterns, April. *Convo Recap, Dinner with her mom. *Pros/Cons Matrix, version 4. *Exit Strategy Draft. At first, I didn't know how to process it. I opened one file at random. It was a spreadsheet tracking our arguments, what time they happened, what I said, what he said, how long it lasted, who won. Yes, he had a column for that, and even a post-analysis note about how I could have responded differently. I felt sick. Who does that? The next file was worse. It was a summary of my emotional state each week, rated like some kind of psychological report card. There were color-coded charts on when I was more stable, when I cried, when I was difficult to reason with. One line stuck with me, week 19, note increase in irrational behavior after wine. Possible hormonal factor. Reassess compatibility long-term. I just sat there, frozen. I read through pages and pages of this research. It was like he'd been studying me, not loving me. Noticing not the things that made me me, but the things that annoyed or inconvenienced him. And then I saw the audio files. There were dozens of them. I clicked one at random, dated 3 months ago. It was a recording of us. I didn't even remember the conversation, it was just a normal evening. We were talking about taking a trip to visit my sister. Nothing intense. But he'd recorded it, annotated it, labeled it, test, reaction to unexpected plans, observe tone. He was analyzing me like a damn lab rat. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. I felt violated in a way I can't even describe. This wasn't just keeping secrets. This was a whole other level. And then I noticed one more folder. It was tucked away at the bottom, not like the others. It had no date. It was simply labeled, prototype. I hadn't even opened it yet, but I already had a terrible feeling. My hand hovered over the mouse. That folder, prototype, looked different from the rest. No date, no version, no breakdown. Just a single word. Clean. Final. Like this was the conclusion of whatever he'd been building in those other files. I clicked it. Inside, there were only 2 things, a Word doc and a video file. The doc was titled Prototype Summary, and the video was labeled Final Assessment. I opened the document first. It was written like a report. Not a love letter. Not a journal entry. Not even a venting note. A report. Complete with sections, bullet points, and headers like *Observed deficiencies in version 1.0, current wife. *Projected compatibility score, 67%. *Ideal trait cluster reconfiguration. *Candidate comparison analysis. The first few lines made my blood run cold. Prototype 2.0 is an idealized construct based on cumulative data from real-world interactions with subject 1.0, wife. Emotional volatility, stubbornness, and need for reassurance remain limiting factors in long-term sustainability. Exploration of alternate models and personality templates has yielded promising results. It got worse. He'd been comparing me to other women. Not explicitly, he didn't use names, but it was clear. There were references to Subject B and Subject C. He'd built personality matrices based on how those women made him feel versus how I did. He had ratings for everything: supportiveness, independence, sexual enthusiasm, even conflict resolution efficiency. There was a whole section labeled Sexual Compatibility Notes that made me feel physically ill. Bullet points about frequency, satisfaction, moments he faked emotional connection. I could barely breathe. I should have stopped there, but I couldn't. Not with that video file staring back at me like it was holding the final piece of the puzzle. So I opened it. The video was short, only 5 minutes, but it changed everything. It wasn't some recorded argument or therapy session. It was Nate, sitting in his home office, facing the camera directly. Calm, focused. His voice sounded like he was giving a presentation at work. He said he'd reached the end of his observation period. That version 1.0 had failed too many compatibility benchmarks and emotional tests. That I was functionally incapable of adapting to the optimized lifestyle he envisioned. Then he smiled. A small, satisfied smile. Like someone proud of a project nearly complete. He said, Phase 2 starts soon. I've already initiated a relationship with candidate B. She exhibits 90% of the desired attributes. If things continue progressing, I'll begin transitioning fully within the next 60 days. I stared at the screen, stunned. Not only had he been planning to replace me, but he'd already found her. Candidate B. He was seeing someone else, dating her, probably sleeping with her, while analyzing me like a failed prototype. I closed the laptop and just sat there, still as a statue, trying to figure out how the man I married could do something like this. Not just cheat, but deconstruct our entire relationship like a failed experiment. I wish that was the worst of it. But when I finally worked up the nerve to check our shared calendar, I realized something. His business trip next week? It lined up exactly with the start of Phase 2. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I lay there in the dark next to him, while he slept soundly, like someone who hadn't spent the last year dissecting his wife like a broken appliance. His breathing was slow, peaceful. Meanwhile, my heart was thundering in my chest. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to wake him up and throw the laptop at his face and demand answers. But I didn't. I knew if I did, he'd lie. He'd gaslight me. He'd twist it all, act like I misunderstood, maybe even blame me for snooping. I needed more. Not for closure. For clarity. Because part of me, some hollow, broken part, still wanted to believe I'd imagined it. That maybe Candidate B was a fantasy. That he hadn't already moved on while still sharing my bed. That I wasn't being replaced like software. So I waited. The business trip was scheduled for Thursday through Sunday. He claimed it was a team retreat at a cabin 2 hours north. I checked the location in our shared calendar. It was vague, just leadership offsite, confidential. Normally I wouldn't have blinked. But now I saw it for what it really was, a lie wrapped in corporate lingo. He left Thursday morning, suitcase in hand, suit jacket over one arm. Kissed my forehead like always. Told me not to work too hard while he was gone. I smiled back and said, have a great trip. He didn't know I'd already booked a room at a hotel 10 minutes from his so-called off-site location. Or that I had a rental car waiting in the driveway of a friend's house, so mine wouldn't be missing when he left. I had every move planned. When he drove off, I waited 2 hours. Then I followed. He wasn't hard to track. I'd found the leadership off-site location through a Google search. It was actually a wellness retreat, but it had nothing to do with his company. I sat in my rental car a block away, engine off, watching from behind dark sunglasses. Sure enough, his car rolled into the parking lot right on schedule. He stepped out. Alone. But he wasn't alone for long. 10 minutes later, a rideshare pulled up. Out stepped a woman. Slim. Long brown hair. Dressed casually, like she knew exactly how to look effortless. She smiled when she saw him. He smiled back. They hugged like it wasn't the first time. Then he picked up her suitcase and walked with her toward the entrance. That was her. Candidate B. I stayed in the car, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My stomach churned. My chest felt hollow. Like everything inside me had been scooped out and left behind. They were checking in together, probably pretending to be some couple on a romantic getaway. I could have confronted him right then and there. But I didn't. Because I hadn't come to scream. I hadn't come to make a scene. I needed to see it. To make it real. To burn the image so deep into my mind that no apology could ever erase it. And later that night, I followed them again. That night, I stayed parked in the hotel lot until the sun dipped below the trees. I watched the entrance like a hunter, silent, waiting. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought he'd sneak around, that there'd be shame or caution in his steps. But no. Nate walked through that lobby like a man with nothing to hide. At 7:13 p.m., they exited together. He had his hand on the small of her back. She laughed at something he said. That laugh hit me like a punch, because I recognized it. It was mine. I used to laugh like that with him. Not at jokes, not at words, but at the way he looked at me when he was relaxed. Before all the files and charts and ratings. Before I became some experiment he was trying to upgrade from. They walked across the parking lot to a quiet restaurant on the edge of the lake. I followed on foot, keeping my distance, always staying out of line of sight. There was a perfect spot, a picnic bench under a tree across the path where I could sit and watch their reflection in the restaurant's windows. I watched them talk, eat, clink glasses. But what broke me was how natural they looked. Not sneaky. Not guilty. Like a couple who'd been together for years. She touched his arm the same way I used to. He leaned in and laughed at her stories like he'd never done with anyone else. Then something clicked. I remembered that spreadsheet back in the folder, Behavioral Patterns, April. There was a note about how I deflected vulnerability with sarcasm. A comment on how I rarely maintained eye contact during emotional exchanges. He had ranked me. Reduced every part of who I was into metrics and lists. And now, here she was. A woman with wide eyes, soft voice, perfect posture. She was his fix. His prototype 2.0. I wasn't malfunctioning, I just didn't fit the design anymore. They left the restaurant around 9 p.m., walking back slowly, hand in hand. I felt like a ghost watching my own life being lived by someone else. Like I'd died and no one had told me. Back at the lodge, I waited. Around midnight, I crept around to the backside of the retreat center where their cabin was. The curtains were drawn, but I could still see silhouettes. One figure, his, standing. One, hers, moving toward him. And then the lights went out. I stood there longer than I should have. Numb. Completely empty. Not even crying anymore. I thought about walking away. Going home. Pretending I hadn't seen any of this. But as I turned to leave, I saw something on the porch railing, something small, something black. I crept closer. It was his smartwatch. Just sitting there. Unlocked. I picked it up without thinking. The screen lit up automatically, no passcode required. His notifications were all still active. And the last message? A text from her. I can't wait until she's out of the picture for good. Holding that smartwatch felt like holding a live wire, dangerous, electric, something I knew could burn me but I couldn't let go. I stood there in the dark, shaking, trying to steady my breath while the screen glowed softly in my palm. That message. I can't wait until she's out of the picture for good. What did that mean? Was it just a cruel turn of phrase? Or something more? I scrolled backward through their messages. She called him Natey, something no one else ever had. She sent him photos, some flirty, some of her dog, one of a cookbook with a caption like wife material winking face. But then I saw this thread. Her, did you make the call? Nate, yeah. She's still listed as co-owner on the policy, but I'll handle it soon. Her, good. Don't let her stall it. If anything happens, I don't want to be tied to her crap. My heart thudded in my ears. The call? The policy? I pulled up his recent calls. Sure enough, 2 days before the trip, there was a long call to our life insurance company. I recognized the number immediately. We'd set the policy up after we bought the house, equal beneficiaries on each other's plans. But there was another call, too. One to a lawyer's office. I felt like I was falling through my own reality. I had no proof of anything yet, but something was wrong. Something dark. I opened the Notes app on the watch. He used it all the time to jot reminders to himself. I scrolled through grocery lists, client names, random to-do items. And then I saw one titled simply, Timeline. I tapped it. It was a list. June, begin distancing emotionally, track reaction. August, increase travel, introduce concept of work retreats. October, initiate separation, cite emotional burnout. December, trigger buyout clause in policy once medical pre-screen clears. January, full transition. I didn't understand all of it. What buyout clause? Medical pre-screen? But it was a plan. It wasn't just an affair, it was structured. Cold. Clinical. I was a box he needed to check off before starting over clean. I stood on that porch, completely still, the cold biting at my hands, trying not to fall apart. And then the screen lit up again. A new notification from her. Got the confirmation. Her name's off the policy. You're set. That's when everything inside me twisted. I needed to get out of there, but not before making sure I had everything I needed. So I took photos. Every message, every note, every time-stamped call log. I screen-recorded the message thread. I sent it all to my backup email address, one Nate didn't know existed. And then I put the watch back, right where he'd left it, like I'd never touched a thing. Because I knew now, whatever this was, it wasn't just cheating. He'd made me a liability. A final obstacle between him and a clean slate. I didn't sleep that night, not even a second. By the time the sun rose, I was already halfway home, watching the rearview mirror like I expected Nate to come flying up behind me. I kept replaying everything in my mind, the messages, the policy talk, the damn timeline like I was a deadline in someone's project plan. He wanted me gone. Not just out of his life, cleaned out of it. Quiet, neat, profitable. When I walked through my front door, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just went straight to my laptop, opened the email account he didn't know existed, and reviewed every file I'd sent myself. The texts. The timeline. The insurance call log. I saved everything into a hidden folder on an encrypted USB. Then I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade, my old roommate's cousin, Vanessa. She was a divorce attorney. The type who didn't flinch when things got ugly. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her everything. Every file, every message, every detail. She didn't ask me if I was sure. She asked me where to begin. We met in her office that afternoon. I handed her the USB. She plugged it in, scanned the folders, and her eyebrows slowly climbed higher as she clicked through the files. When she finally leaned back in her chair, her face was unreadable. Then she said something I'll never forget. He's not just trying to replace you. He's trying to erase you. Turns out Nate had quietly initiated steps to separate our finances months ago. Small moves, opening new accounts, shifting automatic deposits, changing beneficiary information on retirement plans. All things I would have missed if I wasn't specifically looking. But Vanessa did look. She had a contact in insurance. They pulled up the policy I thought still had both our names on it. And yeah, my name was gone. 2 weeks ago, Nate filed to make himself the sole beneficiary of my life insurance. Claimed it was a clerical error that I was ever listed at all. And worse? He submitted a medical clearance form on my behalf, faked a signature, scheduled a basic exam while I was away at a friend's last month. Used my name, my ID, even filled out the health history himself. It wasn't about divorce. It wasn't even just about cheating. It was about money. My policy had a clause that allowed a partial payout under specific conditions. He was lining up paperwork to cash it out, before I ever saw the inside of a courtroom. Before I even realized we were over. Vanessa told me to sit tight and say nothing. No confrontation. No cryptic text. No hint that I knew anything. She wanted time to file an emergency petition to freeze our joint accounts and open an investigation into the insurance fraud. Quietly. Carefully. She said we needed to play the long game. I agreed. But what I didn't tell her was that I already had one more card up my sleeve. Because Nate was still on that trip, still playing house with his prototype. And I knew he wasn't coming home until Sunday. Which gave me just enough time to flip the script. By the time I left Vanessa's office, I had a plan and a deadline. 3 days until Nate came back. 3 days to take everything he thought he had under control, and quietly, precisely, flip it upside down. First step, protect myself. Vanessa filed the emergency motion that night. We froze our joint accounts and flagged the life insurance company. A fraud investigation was initiated behind the scenes, quiet, like she promised. Nate wouldn't know until they contacted him. If they even had to. Because what he didn't realize is that once fraud is suspected, they watch you. Second step, gather allies. I didn't want to involve anyone, but this wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was potentially criminal. So I called my brother, Liam. I kept it short. Told him Nate had done something unforgivable. That I needed help. No questions. Liam didn't hesitate. He took off work and showed up the next morning. Just like that. Third step, control the battlefield. While Nate was whining and dining his upgraded soulmate, I was removing myself from the version of life he'd built around me. I transferred my personal files from our shared computer, backed up photos, changed passwords, scrubbed my information from every smart device. Alexa, Google Home, our Ring cameras, all reset or disconnected. I contacted the bank and flagged Nate's recent transfers. Confirmed what Vanessa suspected, he'd started moving small amounts into an account I'd never heard of, one in a different state. But the real surprise came when I called the realtor who'd helped us buy our house 3 years ago. Apparently, Nate had recently inquired about selling it. He never said a word to me. He'd already started the pre-listing process. And guess what he told the agent? That we were separating amicably, and that I'd already agreed to vacate. The audacity of that man. So I beat him to it. I boxed up everything I owned. Every photo, every piece of clothing, even the mug I always used for morning tea. I took it all. Every bit of me vanished from that house. Like I'd never lived there. And then? I cleaned. Not out of respect, but to make a point. The house looked perfect, quiet, empty, cold. Just like he wanted. The final step was the hardest. I left one thing behind. On the kitchen counter, in the center of the room, I placed the printed copy of his timeline. The one labeled Wife 2.0, Phase 2. I highlighted every incriminating phrase. Annotated it with questions like what's the buyout clause for, Nate, and did candidate B help write this? And then I added a sticky note on top. Nate came home Sunday evening, right on schedule. I wasn't there to see it in person, but I didn't need to be. Because the moment he unlocked the front door, I got the alert. I'd reconnected the Ring cam earlier that morning, not to the shared account, but to a new private one. Just long enough to capture his face the second he realized everything had changed. The notification pinged my phone at 5:47 p.m. I watched the video from my brother's living room. He stepped inside, luggage in one hand, phone in the other, smiling. Casual. Relaxed, like a man returning from a romantic weekend, confident that everything was still neatly under his control. Then he stopped. His smile twitched. He looked around, confused. The house was empty. Bare. My photos gone. The coat rack missing. No trace of my books on the shelves or my shoes by the door. Even the dog bed had been rolled up and taken. There was no music. No lights. Just silence. And then? He saw the folder on the kitchen counter. I wish you could have seen how fast his expression changed. He dropped the bag. Walked over. Picked up the paper. His eyes moved fast, left to right, then stopped. He froze. The sticky note practically vibrated in his hand. You know when someone realizes they're not the one holding the knife anymore? That was his face. Then he looked around like he expected me to be standing behind a corner. Waiting. Watching. Maybe ready to beg. Maybe ready to fight. But I wasn't there. He was alone. A man who built a backup life behind his wife's back, now standing in the ruins of the one he thought he could walk away from on his own terms. The second video alert hit my phone 30 minutes later. He was on the phone, loud, panicked, pacing the living room. He was calling her. I couldn't hear her side, but I didn't need to. His words told me everything. She knows. She found it, everything. The whole folder. I don't know how. I don't even know where she went. She's not answering. She took everything. And then, quieter. What do you mean we should lay low? What the hell do you know that I don't? That's when it hit him. The accounts were frozen. The policy was flagged. The lawyer he'd been speaking with? Already informed of the investigation. Vanessa worked fast. I don't know what she said back, but he shouted, "Are you kidding me? You said this was clean," before hanging up and throwing his phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. You'd think that would be the climax, the big explosion. But no. It was what happened next that broke something in him. He walked over to the dining table, sat down, and cried. The man who had rated me, ranked me, replaced me before I even knew I was in competition, sat in the middle of the cold, hollow house he tried to erase me from. And wept. The first message came that night. A pathetic little blip on my phone screen at 9:12 p.m. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted, but because I was stunned he even thought there was anything left to say. After everything. The betrayal, the lies, the replacement plan, the policy fraud, the new candidate, he still thought words might fix it. I didn't respond. The next day, 5 more messages. I don't know how this got so out of hand. I never meant to hurt you like this. You weren't supposed to find it yet. I just needed time to figure out what I really wanted. I still love you. That last one? I laughed. It was so hollow, so robotic. Like someone trying to play the right emotional card but too late in the game to realize it doesn't matter anymore. Like he hadn't already printed a manual on how to upgrade me. He kept trying. Over the next 3 days, I got messages from 3 different email accounts, 2 unknown numbers, and even a burner Instagram. One message said he missed my emotional depth. Another said, she's not what I thought. He was unraveling. Just like I knew he would when he lost control. Eventually, he left a voicemail. His voice was flat, rehearsed, like he was trying to sound stable. I know you're angry. But I think we both overreacted. What I did was clinical, maybe. But it was for clarity. I needed structure to understand our disconnect. I thought I could create something better, but I was wrong. I see that now. That phrase stuck with me, something better. I never replied. Not directly. But I sent one thing to his work email. A photo of his timeline. Marked up in red pen. Circles around the words transition and trigger buyout. And one single sentence, written across the top. Next time, just file for divorce like a normal sociopath. After that, the messages stopped. The investigation into the insurance fraud is ongoing. Vanessa thinks it'll likely end in a settlement and a quiet blacklisting from most major carriers. Maybe even a minor charge if they can prove intent with the forged signature. That timeline document alone is damning. We're finalizing the divorce paperwork this week. He won't contest anything, not after what Vanessa sent his lawyer. As for me, I'm staying with Liam for now. I've started therapy. I picked up a part-time teaching gig, something I never thought I'd go back to. I cook dinner for myself most nights. I open the blinds in the morning again. It's quiet, but it's mine. There are no spreadsheets tracking my moods. No timelines. No version numbers. Just me. And honestly, that's more than enough. So, yeah. That's the end of it. My husband tried to replace me like software. I walked away like a woman with a soul. And I hope one day, when he's alone with all his data and his prototypes and his fake little future, he realizes something. The only upgrade I ever needed was losing him.